Kumlan and Abla Gemara. Today's daf is daf Nun Dalet Amar Aleph. This is the daf for Shabbos Mevorchim, Chedesh Ir. So we learned about your Yibum that even though you had no kavana, it was done b'shegig, inadvertently, for the wrong reasons. Nevertheless, it is valid. So now the Gemara wants to know what is the source for that halach. Daf Nun Dalet Amar Aleph, about 7 or 8 lines from the top of the page. Not immediately. How do we know all this? Tanabana. We learned in the pasuk where it talks about Yibum. The pasuk says, Yevamos Daf, they should have relations with her. Then it says, you should take her as a wife, and you should marry her. So we're going to dash in every couple of words in the pasuk. Yevamos Daf, mitzvah. So mitzvah is preferred to marry rather than chalitza. Another pshat, Yevamos Daf, bein b'shegig, whether it was done by inadvertently, thinking it's his wife, bein b'mezid for lust, bein b'oinez coercion, bein b'ratzon willingly. We discussed yesterday the difference between b'ratzon and b'mezid. Says the Gemara, how can you use the pasuk for that? Well, Hafiktil the Mitzi just said that they need the pasuk teacher that is preferred to marry. Says the Gemara, the mitzvah. We have another pasuk if he refuses to marry, it says the im lo yachbetz ish nafka. That if he doesn't want to, then we proceed down the line of chalitza. Sounds like chafetz yabim. The first thing to do is yibum. So the chiyas kra. So what do we the pasuk over here? Yevamos Daf. Oh, it's kra. Is bein b'shegig b'mezid bein b'ratzon to teach you all these different possibilities. Tani l'chan. Otherwise, we learned Yevamos Daf kedarka. He has normal marital relations with her. Ulakoch, if he takes her any way you take her, even shaloi kedarka, even not the natural way of having intimate relations. Then the pasuk says v'yibem. It could have said v'yibma. And the whole word is extra. It says it could have said v'yibem without the extra hey, and then that also would have been extra. So what does v'yibem mean? Bia gemeres, but only bia concludes the relationship. Ain't not like by a woman that you can give kedushin. No, here kedushin doesn't work. It's not effective. But then v'yibem there's an extra hey as well. Bal korcha, even by coercion. So another pshat is. The second shot is what we just said before in all different kinds of scenarios. In this brayso we use Yevamos Daf that has to be ordinary relations. So it says the purpose is to continue the legacy of your brother in his name, then you have to be able to have children. That's only the natural way, the normal way of relations. The makom should make him shame. The way you can only produce a child. The chiyas across what you the pasuk for Yevamos Daf bein b'shegig b'mezid bein b'ratzon. Good for let's analyze it as you said before. Amar Rav Yehuda said Yashin, but if he was asleep, like Kana be Yevamta. If he was asleep, he could have had more kavana, and he was asleep. Then he's not kainen. How do we know that? Because it says a pasuk Yevamos Daf until he actually has Yevamos Daf, he has to have kavana for bia. Now you don't really have to have kavana for bia, because we said, but we'll learn later on that even as Tyson points out, even if you just rub against the wall, but you have to have kavanah for this action. Be aware what you're doing. So as you time you learn bein yoshin, whether you're up or whether you're asleep, it's good enough. And here you tell me you have to have some kind of kavanah. Yet we know it makes no difference bein bein yoshin. So we answer that Amos say. Bein Eila, bein Yeshena, whether she's up or whether she's asleep, but he has to be aware. But you might have time with another brayso, bein Eid who, bein Yoshin who, bein Eila he, whether she's up, bein Yeshena he. So both of you, it doesn't matter if you're asleep. When we say that if you're asleep, you're still kind of, we're talking about you weren't really asleep, you're just dozing off. And then what's the definition of dozing? Asleep and not asleep. He's up but he's not up. What does it mean? If you call out his name, he'll respond. But if you ask him any question that requires any thought, he can't answer. If your mind tomorrow, I spoke to you, then you'll remember. Let's analyze it. Rabbi said, we learned again, we're analyzing everything we learned before. Yesterday, Nofim and Agag, he falls with the roof and Nitka, and he lands into a woman. And he causes her harm, Chayba, but Vodim, Chayba, 4 different kinds of payments, but not for shame. But also you're not kind with the Vameh, because he had no intention whatsoever at all. So first of all, you have to pay for damages and pain, and for the fact that he's unemployed, and for medical bills, not for shaming. Not chai. Why not? Amamar, we learned ain't chai valaboishes achis kam. Shaming is only considered shaming if that was your purpose, to shame the person. Here it was all done by accident. Amar says Rabbi. What happened? This Gavin Latia Bekaisel, he intended to rub himself against the wall, his body against the wall. But realizing it suddenly turned out to be that he was pressing against his Yevama. Lekanda, you're not kind at all. Lahatiach bedehema, but if he had intention to rub against a behema, which means you had intention for the act. By the wall, you had no intention for the act. But if you had intention by behema for the act, and the tiach Yevama kana, you are kind. So we said before, mechavan loss. Taser points out doesn't mean mamish to have kavana for the mitzvah, just as long as you have kavana for the general idea. So he had intention to have beer. Then we also said matter whether he just initiated. How do you know that hara is already sufficient to be kind from the Torah? It says in Pasuk, the ish asher yishkev is evil, isha dava, and if a person has relations with a woman, a dava, let's say he's a nida, and the gila es ervasa, and he reveals the discrete parts as mekoida had. So what happened? His source had he just started. Maybe we see that hara is from the Torah. Ashkan nida. All we know is a nida. The same thing applies to any other erva, incest or anything else. That hara is sufficient to be chayiv. If you can tell me nail if you learn from nida, I can argue malin nida. You know why nida? She came at Tama's boiler. Nida is that powerful that not only she's a full nerd, but she also is matami her husband. That he also becomes tummy for 7 days, because it says a passage with he need dasa Allah on him. Ask him my husband's wife. It says the ish asher yikach is if somebody marries his brother's wife, and the Torah says nidi, she's called a nida. I know she's a state of a nida at the time. Elakinida means that halachically, legally has a status of a nida. Ma nida b'hara, nida is sufficient hara. Af isha is b'hara. You can argue okay, but the brother's wife, she can't be rabbis. He has the ability to marry more women and continue to increase the isid of Eishes Och. As Taisa says, points out on the bottom of the page, that given that this makes him so powerful that he can increase as much isa impact on others. So therefore, it makes sense that even hara should be us. The boy Mekad was he can marry cow for even 1,000. Ella Asya, so where do you learn out from? Maybe that's different. Ella Asya, we learn out. So all we know from here is that anywhere that any erva which comes through marriage, for example, your father's wife or your son's wife, or your mother, all these that come through marriage, fine, I understand that hara should be us. But when it comes to your own mother or your sister or your daughter, that you have no opportunity to increase that isa, so who said that hara is enough? But you're right. Elas, you will learn out from achais of achais aim. You learn out from achais of achais aim. Your father's sister or the mother's sister. There also it says because your relative had his relative had it, which again says clearly you started off that you started out. So therefore we learn from there, the father's sister, the father or the mother's sister. Says the Gemara from there you learn out all of that ayis. Again you can be you did nothing for it. So all that ayis that you did nothing for it. Mostly your mother, your sister, your daughter. But you cannot be punished from your arayas that comes through your marriage. So you must say, right, you can't live for an individual, but let's live for two. So okay, let's analyze. Which two? So we have 3 dinim. We have here the nida, we have here the eishes och, and we have a chais avid. So let's learn from 2 of them together. Teisim eishes och from your brother's wife, achais av and your father's sister, achais and your mother's sister. I can argue malahana shekena sudim mishum she'ed. These over here, okay, you can't ask individually. This is an Easter that comes on its own, like for example, the father, sister, and so on. But Ashenkin, your brother's wife, he came through a marriage. Over there, on the other hand, you say, but he can increase the Easter. But then you say, but you can't increase by your mother, your father, or your father's sister, your mother's sister. So therefore, we say, what's the tzad of shobei draw to them? And the also because erva. So and we see that what the hara is like marbia, just initiating is enough. So maybe all the rays are the same. So again, I can argue no. At least these two, your father's sister or your brother's wife, the Easter becomes because of she'ein, but it's your relative. Mashenkin, your brother's wife is not because of Mashenkin, your brother's wife is a married woman. And a married woman is not really relative. What about a married woman that isn't your brother's wife? Any marriage also. Because you're relative, your father's sister, and is your relative. But a married woman has nothing to do with the fact that it's your relative. Elotation learn from Nida. The achais of achaisem learn from Nida. Nida is not your relative, and achais of achaisem. Both of them come by itself. Not that you initiated Ella to taste him and Nida Beishazach. Let's learn from Nida and Beishazach. Nida comes from itself, Beishazach is not through marriage, and to learn from them. The my parchit, what are you going to ask then? There's nothing you can ask then by Beishazach in this case, because you can say anything which is unique regarding Beishazach because Beishazach is through marriage, so you have it right there. And Nida is not through marriage, but between the two of them, we can learn now that every time erva is usher, it's even haro. Actually, that's a question. That which made them usher will never become mutter while the Easter exists. For example, as long as your brother's alive, you cannot marry his wife. By Nida, as long as she's menstruating, it can't be mutter until she stops menstruating. So therefore, there's no heter while they're alive. Taima be'esh is a married woman, you can divorce her. There's a heter if he divorces her. So therefore, again, how do you know that case? That hara, for example, a married woman, that hara is sufficient to be ushered. Are you going to tell me that I need it? And your brother's wife, who well, you tell me that what? That they're tell me that there's no heter while the Easter is there, but as soon as the Easter is over, they become mutter. What are you talking about? Nida is b'yei metali milsa. Even after it starts bleeding, doesn't become mutter. She has to count 7 days. And furthermore, as Rashi points out, you have to go to mikveh. Or there's a restraint point, you have to go to mikveh as well. So it doesn't permit it straight away. H is och is bebonim tali rachmana. The brother dies, doesn't make kamuta, only if she's childless. So therefore, your question is not really a question. You can't tell me about chayos and afterwards is mutter. But afterwards, not mutter either. Ella porechach. This is what we should ask. That which asa them is not what's matter them. The brother dies, is not mutter unless there's no children. The bleeding stops is not mutter straight away. When it comes to an ordinary married woman, that which is asa them, the man, as soon as he divorces her or he dies, she's mutter. So therefore, it's so different. How do you know that Eish is Ish? Hara is like the Gemara. Rabbi Yonah says, which you quoted a few times already, there's a special hektish. It says in Pasuk, this is Pasha. Kol asher yasem in Pasha Achri. Kol asher yasem mikol to Avers Eva. Kol asher yasem, everything you do from these abominations, the nichnuv suhan lefashas ha'oisis. Those people are doing it should be cut off. So hukshu kol arayt kol nida. We compare everything to nida. Because the Pasha told me as well. Ma nida b'hara. Nida is hara as well. It's avkol b'hara. So too, everything is hara. Because included in the Pasha hara, he says nida. So everything compared to nida. And hara is sufficient to be awesome. So why is the word nida written by the word eshzach? The word nida is not there for Gzeir Shava. What do you need that for? For another thing altogether. Where is there an allusion to the Torah for Yevamos? The mother already pounced. It says clearly the pasuk Yevamos Yevaleh. I know that Yevamos is forbidden while the husband is still alive. It's a svara. It says after Reuven died, for example, she can marry a brother-in-law. So obviously, when Reuven's alive, he can't. The cloud of B'chai Bailas is awesome. So who said the Dil Malachim is about a mitzvah? Maybe Reuven died as a mitzvah for Shimon to marry her, but maybe B'chai Bailas says, but while Reuven's alive, Reuven Shimon is allowed to marry her. Is allowed to marry her, yeah. In other words, how can be married? A married woman. If Reuven divorced her, for example, maybe Shimon is allowed to marry because it's a sister-in-law and there's a mitzvah if Reuven dies. So when he divorces her, maybe he's allowed to. Or let's say I'll grant you. You're right. While Reuven's alive, he cannot marry her. But how do you know? For the mitzvah say. The mitzvah say to marry after Reuven dies. So therefore, there's a lav to marry when Reuven's alive. But it's a lav habom miklal say. The lav habom miklal say. I say it's hachakol tzara say. It's not a lav. I'm not going to get malchus or anything. I'm not going to. If the pasuk says, "The ish asher," it says in the pasuk, "The ish asher yikach as eshes achiv nidahi." Called a nida, taking his brother's wife. She's treated like a nida. Man nida by nida. Even though she has a heter acham mekan, there's a heter after she waits a certain amount of time. But while it's also kodesh, af eishes achnami. Same thing with your brother's wife. Even though there's a mitzvah after Reuben died, but while he's alive, there's an isa kodesh. But Reuben's alive, but kodesh you get kodesh, even if he divorced her. Okay, fine. So now I know why it says neither by an Eishazach. Tell me, Hara d'chsiv gabe by a father's sister, a mother's sister. It says the Hara. What do you think Hara? Now that you have Rabbeinu Hekesh, that all the Hara is equal to each other, then I know already Hara is us. Lomali, what do you need that for? Because the question that Ravina asked from Rabbi. What about Mishkal Zocher? There's homosexuality. What about there? There's only Hara. Mao. The Zoch, do we say it says there by male mishkele ishaksiva compared to a woman, so therefore it should be. So we want to answer the Zoch mishkele ishaksiva. It says by mishkele isha, so obviously it's exactly the same thing. Whatever the din there applies here. Says fine. What by bestiality by behema? Mao, what's it in there? Amalei, he said to him, when it comes to the father, sister, the mother, sister, the word hara is totally superfluous. We're going to apply it to a behema. I don't understand. If we want to teach it regarding behema, but the din of behema is so different. The punishment is skila, while the punishment is chayav Mrs. Bezin. The punishment for the other race is only karas. Mechdi behema by a behema chayav Mrs. Bezin. It's a chayav Mrs. Bezin. My time is still hara. They got a chayav. There's a why in the world. There's the word hara. You're written by your father's sister, which is only karas. To teach you reflect on a din to do with Mrs. Bezin. Literally Mrs. Bezin. Why aren't you writing about Mrs. Bezin, but nail it Mrs. Bezin, Mrs. Bezin? We should learn from one Mrs. Bezin from another, which are more similar. Says I did the kula krola drasha because since the entire possibly father, sister, mother, sister is coming for drasha, we'll soon see, is because Renami Hamilsa drasha. Therefore, it also wrote hara for drasha, even though it's for something which is totally different. My drasha, what's a drasha? The Tanya, we learned in the pasuk, it says, Ervas achis avicha, the erva of the father, sister, like the Gala don't reveal, because she's your father's relative. Bein mina of, bein mina aim. Father, sister, I don't care if they share only the common father, share common mother, it's the same thing. After it doesn't matter if it's paternal, maternal, maybe only paternal, not maternal, Vidino, and it actually makes sense. Chayiv kan, v'chayiv b'chaysi, chayiv by your sister. Ma chaysi, just like by your cousin, we learn, just like by your sister. Is Beimin aim. It says Bas Evicha Bas Imecha, so it doesn't matter if it's maternal or paternal. So we'll say Avkan, Beimin aim. So to your father's sister makes no difference, paternal and maternal. That's one way of looking at it. Oiklach, we go another way. Chayiv Kan, Chayiv Dasi Chayiv by your father's brother's wife. Mother does when it comes to your father's brother's wife, it's limited only to your father's paternal brother. If it's your father's maternal brother, his wife is not also. Also, maybe only limit to your father. So who should compare it? Dunning, we compare Isa Habame Elav, the Isa Habame Elav. An Isa that comes on its own, like your father's sister, Baltechir, the Dosa, don't bring in your father's brother's wife, which is not natural, not automatic. It had to be done through marriage. Shain Isa Habame Elav. So therefore, we should compare it to your father's sister. And if compared to your father's sister, it makes no difference whether it's maternal or paternal. Oiklach, there is another way going down. Done in Kravia of Mikravia of. Let's learn out relative to your father, relative to your father. Do not bring a raya from your sister, which is your own relative. You're trying to bring a raya from your sister, which is your own relative. Let's learn better from a father's relative. Therefore it says, the Erb of your sister, of your father, you shouldn't be gala. Because we don't know which way to go. Should we learn from your own sister? Should you learn from your uncle's wife? So therefore we say, the Pasuk says, your father's sister, they teach you whether it's maternal or paternal. Then it says, that's the sister of your father. What about the sister of your mother? The same thing, paternal, maternal. Why do you have to write by both your father's sister and your mother's sister? What's the difference? One is us, the other one's us. Says the Gemara, Amar Bavu. We need them. Only by your father's sister. I would say, by your father's sister, it is forbidden because there is yichus over there, because yichus always goes after the father. When it comes to your mother's sister, because there's no yichus over there, maybe not. Your mother's sister came by dice. We know 100% it's your mother's sister. How do you know that it's your father's sister? Who said that? Who said that it's that that your father's really your father? We don't know 100%. We just, as Marachulin said, if you're out there, we follow the Rav. But the Rav is Acharabal. But 100% is your father. We know 100% is the mother, because she carried the baby for 9 months. Therefore, you need it. Says about the dosa, we mentioned before that your father's brother's wife is only if it's your father's brother paternally. How do we know that? The dosa, if she later tana, do we know? Let me name only paternal, I'm not allowed to know that. Amarova says, Rabba, ask you doy. We learn not uncle. Here it says ervas doy gila. He revealed the erv of his uncle. There it says oy doy, oy ben doy. There it says your uncle. Or the son of your uncle, Yigalenu, will redeem him. So we're talking about by slavery. That will redeem it, says your uncle, or the son of your uncle will redeem him. Malahala, just like over there, talking about redeeming an Ebed. Malahala, we're talking about Mishpachta, your father's family, not your mother. I'm coming over the name. The husband, I know it's the father's family. Or Makros is possibly Mishpachta Yigalenu from his family. Mishpachas of Kri Mishpacha. Mishpachas aim ain't a Kri Mishpacha. Your family is your father's family, not your mother's family. So we learn a very interesting thing here. Just to briefly say, we learn a case. Now that we're talking about maternal and paternal, we can learn a case here is a very odd case. But Reuven ended up marrying 5 women. Every time he married a woman, he was told a short while later that his wife died. So he married her sister. So first he married, we'll call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because otherwise too many names will get confused. So 1 and 2 were paternal sisters. 2 and 3 were maternal sisters. 3 and 4 were paternal sisters, and 4 and 5 were maternal. So they were all. What happened was the father, died, and the mother remarried, and then the mother died, the father remarried. So you had each set of 2 sisters. So again, so 1 and 2 were paternal sisters, and 2 and 3 were maternal. So number 3 and number 1 were not related at all. And then 3 and 4 were maternal sisters again, and 4 and 5 were paternal sisters. So 2 and so 5, 3 and 1 are not related. But 3 is related to 2, and 5 is related to, and 3 and 5 is related to 4. So what happened was Reuben was married to 1, told that she died, so he married 2, the sister, the paternal sister. Then he was told that number 2 died, so he married number 3, which was the maternal sister. Now the maternal sister is not related to the first one. Halachically, when later on he finds out that in fact none of them died, it comes out that the second, number 2, he never married. Number 2 was the sister of his wife, so Kedushin would never typhus. But number 3's Kedushin was Chal, because number 3 was not related to number 1. Number 4 was not Chal, because number 4 was the sister of number 3, the paternal sister. But number 5 was Chal, because the maternal sister of 4, but not related at all to number 3. And therefore 1, 3, and 5 became his wives, and 2 and 4 didn't. as a result of somebody, the other, if then Reuven dies, if one of the other brothers gave chalitza or yibum to number 1, 3, or 5, they're all exonerated and all taken care of. If he gave chalitza or yibum to number 2 or 4, nothing happens because they were never Reuven's wives in the first place. Says he told him that his wife died, but Nosach goes ahead and he marries her paternal sister, the from her father. So 1 and 2 are paternal sisters. And then Mesa, then she was told that she died, number 2, V'nosach, so he went ahead and married her sister, Meima, from her mother. Did not share a common father, so number 3 had nothing to do with number 1. But number 1 and 2 were only their sisters because they had a common father. But number 3 is not part of that father. But number 3 has a common mother with number 2. But number 1 and 2 did not share a common mother. So number 3 is unrelated to number 1. But number 2 is related to number 1. So therefore, we'll soon see what happens. And then she died. And they married. So what happened so far is that number 1 died, married number 2. Number 2 died, married number 3. Then Mason number 3 died. Married number 4. That was a paternal sister. Then Mason number 4 died. Then he married sister of the mother. So 1, 3, 5 were married. 2 and 4 were not married to him because they were sisters of 1 and 3. Mutter b'rishayin, was just allowed to live with 1, 3, and 5 because it's totally unrelated to each other. Upaiter to the saying, if Reuven dies and one of the other brothers then gives a chalitza or yibum to 1, 3, and 5, they're all the rest are potter. But the asa b'shnei levius, he cannot marry number 2, number 4 because they are sisters of his wife. And or the chalitza cannot marry because they're sisters of the chalutza. Or sister of his wife. The ain bia achas mehen poiteret tzarasa. And if he had bia, number 2, number 4, doesn't do anything with number 3 and 5 because number 2 and 4 were totally unrelated to Reuven. What happens if it turns out to be that the first wife Taka did die, and then number 2 is a valid marriage, so but 3 isn't, number 4 is a valid, number 5 isn't. So 2 and 4 are valid, and 3 and 5 are not. The first Taka died, and Mutter b'shnei levius, number 2 and 4 are valid. Saying that if you give a chalitza or yibum to number 2 and 4, perfect. But the asa b'shlisha chamish is forbidden 3 and 5 because 3 and 5 are sisters of your wives. Alma, what is he from here? That achais ishta, because in all the cases we gave, some of them are the sister maternal, some are paternal. So we learn from here that achais ishta, that the sister of your wife is bein mina of, bein mina aim, whether it's paternal or maternal, as soon as they are forbidden. And how do we know that? We'll discuss tomorrow in Mitzvah Shem. Okay, good Shabbos, everyone.